My name is Michelle Johnson. I have a husband who's 2 years older than me and a daughter in elementary school. Both my husband and I work. I was a dedicated designer at a certain apparel company. Then one day, I received a phone call at work.
What? My parents were in an accident.
I was in shock. It turned out that my parents had died in an accident while on vacation. My parents, who were close to each other, used to go on trips about once a month. On that day, it seemed they were driving to a tourist destination, but they apparently fell off a cliff on the way. They were found by a passerby, but it was too late. I was stunned, but I managed to leave work early and decided to call my husband first. Hey. I need to talk to you about something important.
What is it? I'm busy, you know?
My husband sounded irritated over the phone. Even so, I took a deep breath and continued the conversation. Actually, my dad and mom have passed away.
Really? Is that true?
Yes. They had an accident during their trip. When they were found, it was already too late. As I talked about my parents, I couldn't help but cry. I was sobbing while on the phone.
Ah, what a hassle. Stop crying, will you? How can you say it's a hassle? My parents are gone. I'm on a business trip right now. Don't call me for such trivial things. Trivial? That's a terrible thing to say. What do you think my parents were to me? Of course, I appreciate what they did for me, but to me, they were practically strangers. Besides, there's no point dwelling on the dead. There might be a funeral coming up, but I can't attend. What? Even though they're family? I told you, as far as I'm concerned, they were strangers. I can't afford to take off work for strangers. So, don't call me anymore.
With that, my husband hung up the call abruptly. I wondered how he could say such cruel things. At that moment, I felt something break inside me. In the beginning, my husband always put me first and seemed to care a lot about me. When he found out I was pregnant, he cried with joy, and during the pregnancy, he was very considerate, almost to the point where I felt embarrassed. Even after our daughter was born, we used to have a good time together, but about a year ago, he started acting distant towards me. He stopped coming home often, and his attitude towards me grew colder. It wasn't that he disliked me, he just seemed to lose interest in me. He used to notice even the slightest changes in me, but now, even if I cut my hair short, he wouldn't care. No matter how much I tried to dress up to catch his attention, he would ridicule me instead.
Come on, at your age, why are you wearing that outfit? You're not young anymore, stop wearing floral skirts. You look shabby.
That's horrible. You used to compliment me.
You've gained weight since we got married, haven't you? I guess having a child really takes away a woman's charm. This is like a fraud.
He would mock my appearance like this. His unkind words hurt me deeply. Our daughter seemed to notice that we weren't getting along. She always seemed worried about me when I was being subjected to his harsh words. One day, as I sat in the living room, deep in thought, my mother-in-law, who was living with us, came over. Actually, we built our own house and started living with my in-laws when our daughter started elementary school. Seeing me cry, my mother-in-law looked displeased.
Hey, what's a grown woman like you crying for?
Actually, my dad and mom just died.
What? How?
They had an accident on their trip.
Both of them gone at once, they really were inseparable. But hey, you're lucky to get the insurance money for both of them. Let's go out for a nice meal with everyone to celebrate. How can you say that? My parents have died. How can you be so cruel? People die eventually, it just happened sooner for them. Stop crying and get dinner ready, will you? I'm hungry.
My mother-in-law is what you'd call a classic case of a difficult mother-in-law. I had hoped that hearing about my parents' death, she would offer some kind words. But it seemed she didn't have a compassionate bone in her body. So, I started preparing for the funeral with the help of my relatives. My husband, claiming he was too busy with work, didn't even attend. I couldn't believe how heartless he was. After my parents' funeral, I decided to start preparing for a divorce. Once everything was in order, I left a voicemail for my husband, who was still on his business trip.
I'm going on a long business trip. Please, take good care of your parents.
That's all I said in the message. I had no more regrets. I left the house where I had lived for so many years with my belongings. A few hours later, while working at the office, I was called in by HR. My husband, drenched in sweat, had come looking for me. I had been ignoring his calls. He probably thought he'd find me at work. Truthfully, I didn't even want to see his face anymore, but I didn't want to cause a scene at work, so I reluctantly agreed to meet him. When I stepped into the entrance, there he was, looking extremely flustered.
Michelle! What's this all about? Mom and Dad are in a mess. Give me a break. I'm sorry, but you can't just show up like this. I'm working, you know? Besides, weren't you supposed to be on a business trip? I rushed back as soon as I got Dad's call. After you left, they were struggling without you. Mom's in the hospital, Dad's bedridden, and your stuff is gone. What happened?
I decided to explain everything to him, step by step.
Your mother's diabetes got worse, and she had to be hospitalized urgently. You knew she had diabetes, right? I knew, but it wasn't a big deal, was it? She always seemed fine at home. She might have looked fine, but her condition was serious. She collapsed with a severe headache. After some tests, they said she needed to be hospitalized. She wasn't taking her medication or going to her doctor's appointments, so her condition worsened. And why is Dad bedridden? Your father threw out his back trying to take your mother to the hospital. He's always had a weak back. And trying to lift your mother, who's nearly 220 pounds, didn't help. What? Really?
My husband was visibly shocked and speechless for a while. My mother-in-law had been suffering from diabetes for about 2 years. She always loved greasy foods and high-calorie snacks, often snacking whenever she had time. I tried to make low-calorie meals for her, considering her condition, but it seemed more annoying to her than anything else.
What is this? The meatloaf hardly tastes like meat. I added soy pulp to the meatloaf, thinking it would help you feel fuller and be better for your health. This is inedible. I don't want to eat such a poor meal. I'm not eating this food.
With that, my mother-in-law threw the meatloaf I made into the sink. This wasn't the first time she had discarded a meal I prepared. Even seeing her do this, my husband turned a blind eye. Worse, he would sometimes blame me for it.
Can't you stop doing things that upset Mom? Like that meatloaf, you're practically picking a fight. I was thinking of her health. If she keeps eating high-calorie meals, it could be life-threatening. That's none of your business. Let her eat what she wants. And don't you dare do something like this again. I'm the one who has to deal with the fallout.
As for my father-in-law, he never got involved in our arguments. It was more about not wanting to get dragged into it than indifference. I can't believe I put up with my husband and mother-in-law for so long. I had thought about divorce many times. But I hesitated because I didn't want to take my daughter's father away from her. Living without a father isn't always seen positively. But I can't live with this man anymore. I've made up my mind.
I'm sorry, but I don't want to talk to you anymore. Can you please leave? I don't want to cause trouble at work. No! I need answers. Let's talk properly. Fine. Let's go somewhere else.
It was lunchtime. So we decided to go to a nearby cafe. As soon as we sat down, my husband asked,
So, what are you going to do about Mom and Dad? You're gonna quit your job and take care of them, right? What? Why should I, a stranger, take care of them? They're your parents. You deal with it. They're your parents, so you should take care of them. Stranger? They're my mom and dad. Sure, we're not blood related, but we're still family. Well, we're going to be strangers soon, so it's none of my business anymore. Why should I care for your parents after we're divorced? Strangers? What are you talking about?
He seemed to be missing the important point.
Didn't you see the divorce papers I left in the living room? I've already filled in my part. I need you to sign it too. Divorce?
He was so preoccupied with his parents' situation that he hadn't paid much attention to the house. He was so shocked that he stood up abruptly.
Please sit down, you're drawing attention. Michelle, are you serious about this divorce? Dead serious. Do I look like someone who jokes? I thought you were just going on a long business trip. That was a lie. I'm actually transferring to a different department in another state. The move is a bit later, though. What? I didn't hear anything about that. After I told my company that I might get divorced, they offered me a transfer. And I'm not telling you which state I'm going to. What? Are you really serious about getting divorced?
He looked at me in disbelief, not expecting things to have progressed this far without his knowledge.
Divorcing will hurt our daughter. Have you thought about her? Are you in any position to say that? After all the betrayals? What? What are you talking about? I haven't betrayed you. On the contrary, I've been working for you and our family. Don't you have any gratitude for me? Gratitude? When you hardly contributed to our living expenses?
My husband stumbled over his words at that. He had started contributing less to our living expenses about 2 years ago, citing a decrease in his salary. Initially, we split the expenses evenly, but gradually, more of the burden fell on me. There were even times when he didn't contribute a single cent. Fortunately, I worked for a decent company and earned a fairly good salary. Even more than my husband.
You don't contribute to the living expenses, leave all the childcare to me, and at home, there's a mean mother-in-law who picks on me. What benefit do I have staying with you? There's no such thing as benefits or drawbacks in a marriage. We married because we loved each other. Maybe I felt that way back then, but not anymore. You love someone else now, don't you? What are you talking about?
He said this, but his eyes were clearly darting around, betraying his nervousness.
I know about it. You've been having an affair with a young woman at work. It's been going on for about a year now, hasn't it? Her name is Lily, right? A slender woman with long black hair, just your type. Wait a minute. What are you talking about? Are you confused or has someone been feeding you lies? No, I hired a private detective to investigate you. I suspected you might be cheating, but I never thought it would be with a woman 10 years younger. And she's married, right? Just got married, and yet, is this okay? You investigated me? Of course. If we're getting divorced, I have to look out for my own interests. With this, I'll get compensation from both of you, which should stabilize my life for a while.
He must have thought his affair was a secret. He was visibly shocked. After deciding to divorce my husband, I hired a private detective to investigate. Since he stopped coming home, his behavior had become suspicious. He started locking his phone, making secretive calls in another room, leaving the house with unusually large bags. I tried not to worry, but he was indeed having an affair. The woman was a temp worker. Apparently, it was she who made advances towards my husband.
She was the one who approached me. She never seemed satisfied with just one man and hit on me at a drinking party. Of course, I rejected her, but she was persistent, and I couldn't resist. So, you're saying it's not your fault? Sure, she was seeing other men, but you're also responsible for getting involved. What? She was with other men? According to the detective, she's been with at least 3 others besides you. She told me I was the only one.
My husband slammed his fist on the table, showing his irritation. From the detective agency's investigation, I found out that the woman he was having an affair with is married to a high-ranking executive of a major company. She's nearly 2 decades older than my husband, and it seems like she married him for his money. My husband's infidelity is bad enough, but she's no better. In a way, they're two of a kind. But I was just messing around with her.
It was just a casual thing, you know. Neither of us intended to ruin our families. You think messing around excuses everything? Maybe I can deal with it, but what about our daughter? What if she gets harassed at school because of your affair? That's the fault of whoever's spreading rumors. It's the kids who poke their noses into other people's business that are the problem.
You always blame others. You cheated and you haven't even said sorry once. You show no remorse at all.
I'm sorry, okay. I'll break it off with her. Isn't that enough?
It's far from enough. I'm leaving you, and I'll be demanding alimony from both of you. At the mention of alimony, my husband's face turned pale.
If you go after her for alimony, that means you'll have to tell Lily's husband about us, right? Lily just got married, that's so unfair to her.
The one who deserves sympathy is Lily's husband, who got betrayed right after getting married. And for your information, I've already informed Lily's husband about the affair.
What?
You hadn't heard from Lily?
No, she's been off sick from work for a while, and I couldn't get in touch with her.
She must have been too shocked to contact anyone.
Are you serious? What am I going to do if this gets out at work?
You brought this on yourself. And you two were using your paid leave to meet up, weren't you?
How do you know all this?
You've been on business trips a lot lately, so I asked your company about it. They said you weren't on any trips, just using your paid leave. I checked, and Lily was off on the same days. You were meeting up, right?
What?
My husband fell silent, looking down. He must know he's caught. Just then, an unexpected person approached us.
What are you doing here? Weren't you on paid leave today? Boss?
It was my husband's boss from the same department. Apparently, the boss often comes to this cafe around lunchtime. My husband looked embarrassed.
You said you needed the day off for family matters, right? Yes, that's right.
His boss, sensing something was off, seemed to have put two and two together. I decided to fill him in on the situation. He knew I was his wife, as we had met a couple of times before. Actually, this guy's been having an affair with a young woman at work, a temp named Lily Young.
What?
Is that true? His boss shouted, loud enough for others to hear.
Boss, please lower your voice, everyone's looking.
Of course they are. I'd be shocked too if my employee was having an affair. And he used his paid leave to meet up with her. You did that during our busiest time?
I'm sorry. I'm going to break up with her, so can you keep it a secret from the other employees?
What are you saying? Of course, I'm going to report this. You're in sales, right? Sales is about selling your character as much as the product. No one's going to buy anything from someone who betrays his own family. You might not get fired, but don't think you can stay in your current department.
Wait, please. I don't know any other kind of work, and if I'm transferred, my salary.
I don't care about your problems. You should be apologizing to your wife. You've hurt her.
I know I did something wrong, but this has nothing to do with my job.
It does, that's why I'm telling you. I've lost all trust in you. We have plenty of capable employees. I'll find someone else to lead the next project. It turned out my husband was the leader of an important project. If it succeeded, he was almost guaranteed a promotion. He had been preparing for it for a long time.
That's not fair. You said I was the right person for the job.
Not anymore. I've lost all faith in you. I'll report to the higher-ups right away. Excuse me. After his boss left the cafe, my husband just hung his head. His boss said he was supposed to take a lunch break, but he had to go back to the office right away to report about my husband.
It's over. Everything was going so well. Why did it have to come to this?
His voice trembled, and he looked like he might cry any moment. I'm going to leave the rest to my lawyer, so let's discuss through him from now on. I left his business card on the living room table, so give him a call if there's anything.
You're really serious about divorcing me?
He asked me with tears in his eyes. It seemed too late for such questions. I nodded firmly.
That's what I said. I can't stand living with a cheater anymore. And I've had enough of your mother too. You always turned a blind eye when she was mean to me. I told you several times I wanted to stop living with her, but you wouldn't listen. You never took my side, even though you saw how she treated me. You always said I was overthinking it. I didn't realize you were so troubled about my mom. I'll be more careful from now on. It's too late for that. You'll have your hands full with visiting the hospital and caregiving for your parents. There's no way I can manage that. Hospital bills aren't cheap, and I have to work. How am I supposed to take care of my dad? Maybe you should consider changing your job. It's gonna be awkward at your current company anyway. Don't say it like it's easy. Please, I'm sorry for the affair. Come back to me. It's impossible. I've already arranged for a transfer at work, and our daughter is preparing to transfer schools too. I don't want to get divorced.
Then, in the cafe, he started crying loudly. He looked like a child who couldn't get the toy he wanted. I was so embarrassed that I decided to leave him there and walk out. He continued to cry even after I left. And it seems some young people in the cafe found it amusing and recorded it, uploading it to social media with a blurred face. Although the video was quickly removed, it seems his colleagues saw it. We officially divorced through our lawyers. I demanded a lump sum in alimony from both my ex-husband and his mistress. I also arranged for my ex to pay child support for our daughter, with my lawyer making sure he keeps up with the payments. His mistress ended up divorcing her husband too. My ex-husband was also sued for alimony by her ex-husband. Both my ex and his mistress found it hard to stay at their jobs and left, seemingly running away. They dated for a while, but she left him because she didn't want to take care of his parents. She's still young, so she probably ran off to some other guy. Now, my ex has to take care of his father at home, so he's not working full-time, just getting by with part-time jobs. As for me, I'm focusing on my work in my new department. I've been given important tasks and even got a small raise. My daughter had to transfer schools, but she's made friends quickly and seems happy. I've become a single mother, but I have no regrets. I'm sure my parents are watching over me. I want to live strongly, watching over my beloved daughter's growth. My name is Eleanor Smith. I've been married for 5 years. At 30, I'm still childless and feeling increasingly anxious about it. But my husband says, kids are just a hassle and expensive. We don't need them. Let's buy a house instead. He talks about it as casually as if he's suggesting getting a pet. No second-hand homes for me. It's gotta be a new build. And once it's built, my mom's gonna move in with us. That's settled. I don't quite understand his decision-making process. But my husband is absolutely obsessed with owning our own home. My husband, George, is an only child, so I anticipated living with my mother-in-law eventually. I don't particularly dislike her, and I thought there wouldn't be any issues. Therefore, I agreed to move forward with buying a house. We carefully planned the layout to ensure a peaceful family life, even paying attention to things like the direction the house faces. The home we built is something I'm satisfied with. And so, my mother-in-law moved in, marking the start of our new family setup. However, problems started to emerge as soon as we began living together. My mother-in-law's personality, which I hadn't noticed in our infrequent meetings, became glaringly obvious. She wouldn't return my morning greetings, re-cleaned areas I had already tidied up, and criticized the way I cut vegetables in the kitchen. If I did it her way, the next time she'd insist on something entirely different. Maybe she's just trying to teach me. But then again, maybe she forgets what she said due to her age. I tried to think that way. However, as time passed, I started to wonder if bothering her daughter-in-law was her hobby. She always had something to complain about, no matter how trivial. She constantly nitpicked everything I did. Whenever I tried to take a shower, she would try to do so at the same time, or she would decide to leave the house at the same time I planned to. She even said that staying home was my duty as a daughter-in-law, so I was forced to change my plans. I eventually spoke to George about these issues, but he wouldn't listen and even yelled at me for speaking ill of his mother. Half a year passed, and both George and his mother stopped speaking to me altogether. It's like I don't exist, with no conversation or interaction. My mother-in-law talks cheerfully with my husband, but the moment I enter the room, they both fall silent. When I sit at the table for meals, she lets out a big sigh. The vibe's off, isn't it? Speaking of which, since Eleanor's not here, I gotta say, she's really incompetent. George, why'd you marry such a woman? Living with her is driving me nuts. Something happened? The lights in the bathroom are always left on, the water's running all the time. And clothes are strewn everywhere. How was she even raised? That's terrible. I'll talk to her next time. It's no use. She'll just deny it and make things unpleasant. The truth is, I haven't done any of that. In fact, it's all my mother-in-law's doing. She blames everything on me, and my husband believes it all. As a result, we've been getting along poorly lately, even sleeping in separate rooms. The reason given was that there are plenty of rooms in the house. Sure, we have spare rooms for future kids, but I never thought it would lead to marital separation. This meal's awful. Maybe Eleanor's cooking doesn't suit your taste, Mom. She might be taste deaf. If I have to eat this lousy food, I'd rather eat out. Yeah, let's get some yummy seafood. And so, my cooking remains uneaten, and I eat alone every day. In the vast room, only the TV seems to talk to me. What a pitiful life. Why am I being ignored? What did I do wrong? I just don't get it. There's a limit to how much to be ignored. Recently, the stress has gotten so bad that I've developed alopecia areata. It was supposed to be a happy marriage, but here I am, stressed to the point of losing my hair. Who could have imagined this? One day, when I returned from work and tried to unlock the front door. What? It won't open. I could insert the key, but it wouldn't turn. Strange, why is that? I tried several times, but it just wouldn't budge. Then, I heard laughter from the other side of the door. Are you there? The key won't turn. Can you open the door, please? I expected to be ignored, but I couldn't start dinner without getting inside. And I knew I'd get snide comments if I didn't cook, even though no one would eat it. Please, open the door. But contrary to my expectations, I heard her voice. You're not needed here anymore. What? Don't you get it? You're not needed anymore. That's why I changed the locks, so you can't get in. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What do you mean by that? It's simple. This is no longer your home. So, please go somewhere else. After that, I heard nothing more from my mother-in-law. What's going on? I muttered, bewildered as I returned to my car. I tried calling my husband. But even though the phone rang, he didn't pick up. No matter how many times I called, there was no answer, leading me to suspect that he and his mother were in cahoots. Knowing those two, it must be true. They're really going to this extent to drive me away, which is just too much. If they wanted me out, they should have discussed divorce, but there was no talk of that. No choice, I guess I'll stay at a motel for the night. I resigned and drove to the motel. Lying in bed, I felt even more confused. I hadn't done anything to deserve this treatment. In fact, I had been the one putting up with things. I tried contacting my mother-in-law again. And also my husband. But to no avail. I tried calling at different times, even when I thought my husband would be home, but he still didn't answer. What's happening? Do they want to break up? If so, they need to tell me because I can't understand without any communication. Days turned into a week, and I still couldn't reach either of them. This is costing me a fortune in motel fees. I don't want to worry Mom, but I have no choice but to go back home. So, I decided to return to my parents' home for the time being. But That house is mine, too. If this continues, I'll keep paying the mortgage without living there. This is ridiculous. After much thought, I decided it was pointless to keep paying the mortgage and resolved to sell the house. I contacted a friend who was a realtor, and they said they could quickly sell it. Well, it's bound to be lower than the purchase price, considering it's been 3 years. I reasoned with myself, preparing to hand it over to the realtor. It's not fair to sell the house without telling George and his mother. If they were suddenly told to vacate, they'd be in trouble too. Even though they had done the same to me, I couldn't bring myself to do it when I thought about their predicament. I'll just text them on Messenger, and if they don't read it, then I'll go through with it. I can't keep taking care of everything forever. So, I messaged my husband and his mother about my decision to sell the house, expecting to be ignored. But surprisingly, right after sending the message, I got a reply from my mother-in-law.
What the heck is this?
Hi, it's been a while.
How dare you say such a cliché?
Well, I couldn't think of any other way.
What's this all about? Why are you selling the house?
It doesn't make sense to keep paying the mortgage when I'm not living there.
You're supposed to pay it, aren't you?
Why should I?
Because you built that house.
True, but then I guess it's my decision to sell it, right?
That's ridiculous. We're living here.
That's why I'm telling you about it now. I wouldn't want you to be suddenly forced to leave.
Of course. We'd have nowhere to go if you just kicked us out.
I was in the same situation, you know.
What are you talking about?
About the time you changed the locks and I couldn't enter my own house. That was necessary. We really don't need you around. What an attitude. Even after doing such terrible things, she doesn't feel any guilt. Anyway, there's no need for me to keep paying the mortgage anymore. I'll be selling the house soon, so please prepare to move out.
I won't allow that.
Even after that, a flood of messages from my mother-in-law kept coming and pressing me hard. But I didn't respond to any of them, completely ignoring her messages. I've said what I needed to say, and whether they move out or not is their own decision. However, that night, my husband called. It seemed he thought I stopped replying because it was a text conversation.
Hey! What's this all about?
What do you mean? You must have heard from your mother. Besides, am I being kicked out of the house because you want a divorce?
We're not talking about that right now. Don't change the subject. I won't allow you to sell the house.
But
this is my house.
But the house is in my name, isn't it? In your name? What's that supposed to mean? Don't you remember when we were building the house, and we discussed whose name it would be in? You said you'd handle the living expenses, so the mortgage should be in my name.
Oh, right.
That's true.
But what does that have to do with the ownership?
Didn't you say it would be too much hassle to arrange the paperwork in your name? And when I said if the house was in your name, you'd have to pay the taxes, you didn't want that. So, you insisted it be in my name, remember?
Yeah. I guess I did say that. But even if it's in your name, I'm living here. And we'd built this house together.
But I, the owner, am not there. It's absurd to keep paying the mortgage after being kicked out. That's why I've decided to sell it. There's nothing odd about it. It's a house built for the family. Then are you going to take over the mortgage payments? If so, that's fine by me. Back then, my husband left everything to me. The house's title, the taxes, the paperwork, and the mortgage. Everything was made to come to me.
Now that I can't enter the house, it's unnecessary for me. Don't be ridiculous. I'll never allow you to sell the house.
Then let's have a proper discussion. If we continue living separately, it needs to be decided whether we get a divorce or not. My belongings are still there, after all. Above all, I don't like this uncertainty. All right, that makes sense. Come over tomorrow, then. So, I stepped into that house again, but I was faced with a shocking truth. Let's settle the divorce issue first. My husband said, presenting me with a blank divorce form. He probably searched for the website and downloaded it. He really intended to divorce. Staring at the divorce paper, I couldn't decide whether to sign it or not. Should I make it this easy to end the marriage? I had anticipated something like this, yet I hesitated.
What's the matter? Hurry up and sign it. I can't be married to a woman who does things her own way. I disliked what you said yesterday, and that made me want to divorce for sure.
So, it's all my fault, is it?
What are you hesitating for? Take it quickly. Yes, hurry up and proceed with it. We don't need a selfish woman like you.
That's when it happened. The front door opened, and a woman's voice said, "I'm home." Moreover, she entered the living room carrying bags filled with vegetables and meat. "Oh, do we have a guest?" "Sorry, I didn't notice," she said, noticing the divorce paper on the table and smiling unpleasantly. Ah, the ex-wife. Finally ready to agree to the divorce, right? Excuse me? You not divorcing George meant I couldn't marry him. Right, George. Wait, what does this mean?
George always told me you wouldn't agree to the divorce. Of course, that makes sense. At your age, remarriage must be difficult. Clinging to the role of a wife, I get it.
What are you talking about?
What do you mean, what? You know George and I have been together for 3 years, right?
What? 3 years. Around the time this house was built?
Since then, George has been asking you for a divorce. But you just wouldn't agree, making it hard for me to marry him. Clinging to this house just because you want it. How greedy can you be?
Listening to her, things started to make sense to me. So, you started being harsh to me right after we moved in with your mother because you wanted to remarry with this person. You had a girlfriend? What? You didn't know? What do you mean? George, what is she talking about? Oh, she's just confused. Probably doesn't remember what we talked about. Ah, I see. That's why George was so tired of her. Yeah, that's right. Isn't it, Mom? That's right. George never liked you. So, you all have been deceiving me.
No, it's not like we've been deceiving you. It shouldn't matter if she came into the house. You left on your own. Left on my own? You're the one who changed the locks and made sure I couldn't get in. But you still chose to leave.
I see. I understand now. I took a divorce paper and put it in my bag. Then, I'll be selling this house.
That's ridiculous. This is my house. The divorce has been decided. Since the house is in my name, it's my right to sell it or do whatever I please. No way. Then transfer the title to me. There's something called division of property in a divorce, right? Just give me the house and we can end this.
Do you really think you can afford the mortgage on this house?
What are you talking about? If you can pay, why can't I? Don't say something stupid.
Really? Are you sure about this?
Yeah, I don't care. Anyway, if the house stayed in your name, you'd do something bad with it. You're that kind of woman.
All right, then. I'll give you the house in the property division, and I'll take the house savings. In exchange, I'll leave the furniture and household items. Well, okay. My husband had no idea how much the mortgage was. He never bothered to check. He didn't care about how much I had been paying each month. And now, with this other woman in the picture. Once this house is gone, he'll likely never own a house again. My husband must have thought he could win over the woman with the house as bait. Once the house is gone, it's clear she will look down on him. That's why, even if he has to give up his savings, he wants to keep the house. What a foolish man. The lowest of the low, he deserves to go to hell. A month later, I received a call from George. To my amazement, he was frantic about the mortgage not being paid.
Hey! What's going on? The mortgage isn't paid.
What? That's none of my business now. The house is yours.
What are you talking about? The title might be mine now, but the mortgage is yours.
What? Why would that be? I just asked for the title, I never said I'd pay the mortgage. That's why I asked if you could afford the mortgage. You said it would be easy, remember? What? Is that what you meant? What else could it mean? I asked if you were sure, but now there's nothing you can do. The mortgage. I have to pay it? Why did you think I would be paying after that conversation? How selfish can you be? How much is the mortgage each month? It's $2,000 a month. $2,000? Half of my $4,000 salary is going to the mortgage? Exactly. How can I live like this? My allowance, her allowance. You give her an allowance? Of course. Of course. I never got an allowance from you. But you were working. Then she should work too, right? No, she can't. She's a natural-born lazybones. I can't ask her to work.
Ridiculous. Then you have to figure it out. I'm divorced from you now, so it's not my problem.
Don't say that. I'm curious. Where did you two meet? How do you even have a connection if she's jobless? We met on a dating site.
You were on a dating site?
Yeah, well. So, you met there and had an affair? Well, yes. This is not funny. We're divorced now, so it doesn't matter.
I can't believe you wanted to marry someone like her. The same goes for her.
When we were married, things were fine, so I thought it would work out. I was working, remember? Well, do as you like. I don't care anymore. 6 months passed. Without any contact from George. I thought he and his wife must have managed to get by. However, what George said next was completely unexpected. It's no good. What now? Actually, I was planning to use Mom's savings to pay the mortgage. But she doesn't have any savings. Oh, your mother, she's quite the social butterfly. Exactly. She said in the past 3 years, she's been traveling, going to bars, and eating at fancy restaurants. She doesn't have any savings left. I see. When I asked her what she planned to do, she said she thought it would be okay because I was there. I see. When I asked about her pension, it turned out to be just a tiny amount. Maybe you should get your new wife to work? Yeah, I realized this situation was bad, so I asked her to work. Then she said it's terrible to ask her to work since she's never had a job before. She said she married me because I promised she wouldn't have to work and that I'd support her as a housewife. But she doesn't even do any housework. Well, she's a cute wife, isn't that enough? She's always fighting with Mom every day. Your new wife fights with your mother? Yeah. In the end, Mom loses and does all the household work. Wow, she even defeated her mother-in-law. That's some strength. Too strong. This is unsustainable. Well, that's what you chose. Don't say that. Please, lend me some money. What? You're asking me, a stranger, to lend you money? You must be joking. We're strangers, why would I lend you anything? You should have your own personal savings. Well, I spent a lot to win her over, and now my savings are gone. How foolish can you be? I thought you would keep paying the mortgage, so I believed everything would be fine. And yet, why did you cheat and get a divorce? Your actions are completely nonsensical. I thought you would keep paying even after the divorce. I believed you wouldn't abandon me because you're kind.
That's some wishful thinking. Who in the world, after being dumped, would still support their ex? That's just not happening.
You really won't lend me any money?
Of course not. No one lends money to someone with no prospects of paying back. Fine. Then I'll borrow from a payday loan service.
Do whatever you want.
It has nothing to do with me.
The debt collectors will come to your place?
What? Why would they come to me, a stranger? That's not going to happen.
Despite his nonsensical claims, 6 months later, he came to see me directly. I borrowed from a payday lender. It seemed he had really borrowed and was trying to make it work. But I can't make the repayments. How much did you borrow? I borrowed enough for the short term, but then the next month's mortgage payment came, and I ended up with both the payday loan and the mortgage. That's to be expected. The debt collectors are relentless. I feel like I'm going bald. Interestingly, my alopecia had settled down, and my hair was growing back in. That must have been the result of my resolution to get divorced. I told the debt collectors to go to you since I couldn't pay, but they refused, saying the debt was mine. That's too obvious.
Please help me, I'm desperate.
George begged. Why not ask your new wife for help? She already left the house. What? You just got married and she left that quickly? She couldn't stand the situation, and she took all the little savings, anything that looked valuable, claiming it was her share of the property. Oh dear. And now the real estate agent is telling me to leave the house. Why? That woman, she used documents without permission and sold the house on her own. She ended up running off with everything. Oh dear. Your wife was smarter than you.
Come on, help me out.
No way. George and his mother eventually had to move into a shabby apartment. For a while, he seemed determined to find his runaway wife and recover the money from the house sale. However, despite all his efforts on the internet, he never saw her again. Eventually, tired George realized that he had to focus on repaying his debts. Despite both him and his mother working, she couldn't stand such a life and got hooked on a dating site for seniors, moving in with a man she met there and starting a new life. Quite resilient. And so, George was left with the harsh reality of his mortgage and debt collectors. He started working a night job in addition to his day job. Resigned to his fate, he focused on making regular payments. However, to make him suffer more for what he did to me, I demanded spousal support, which I hadn't claimed yet, $60,000. He protested, saying he couldn't pay, but when I threatened legal action through a lawyer, he somehow managed to pay. As a result, his debts increased and he's worn out. It's only fair, considering how much he made me suffer. And me? I'm still working. Vowing not to fall for another foolish man who relies on a woman's earnings, and am currently searching for a new love.
Michael, honey.
From a childbirth video found in my husband's room, I heard a voice calling a name.
Please, hold my hand, hold it.
You can do it, Emily. What? That voice. My husband? What is this? Michael, is it him?
Susan.
I didn't even realize my mother-in-law, Susan, was right behind me. May, put this DVD back where you found it for now. We need to look into this. My name is May Irwin. I live in a small town in Nebraska, a 30-year-old part-time housewife. I married Michael 3 years ago. I came to this well-known large house in the area. My parents-in-law, who lost their parents early, are kind to me as if they were my own parents. I'm still working, but I plan to quit once I have a child and focus on parenting for a while. But, having a child has been difficult. I have an idea why. However, even to bring up that reason, the timing has been tough for us. Still, I shouldn't rely too much on the kindness of my parents-in-law, so I did what I could to try to conceive. Checking with the gynecologist to see if there's anything wrong with me, understanding my fertile days, and then approaching Michael for intimate times in a way he wouldn't dislike. But after all, that's only what I can do. After all, having a child requires cooperation from both spouses. But Michael, he's either always home late or often on business trips. Given his job, I understand. I work too, after all. But as the days go on, my nights become restless. Going to bed with anxious thoughts and often watching the outside get brighter without being able to sleep. No matter how tired I am from work or household chores, thoughts about having a child occupy my mind, preventing me from falling asleep. I managed during the day. Or so I thought. One day, as I stood up when called by my boss, everything went dark and I fainted. When I came to, I was in a hospital bed. My head and arms were throbbing with pain.
Oh May, thank goodness. You woke up.
Susan.
You suddenly collapsed at work. Don't try to get up yet. You've hit your head.
I did indeed feel something like gauze on my head. I must have bled from hitting something when I fell. Probably my arm too.
Your boss was worried when you didn't wake up and called an ambulance.
I'm sorry for causing worry.
It's okay. But you know, the doctor said you're not getting enough sleep. Can't sleep?
Yeah. I don't know why.
Well, you're just tired. Maybe you should take a break from work.
I followed Susan's advice. I can't help but think about things even if I'm at home, but it's a problem to suddenly collapse at work and cause trouble for others. So, I decided to take about 10 days off, as I had some paid leave accumulated. But then, the days started to feel very long. I decided to do a thorough cleaning.
You should just relax,
Susan would say, but being told to suddenly take time off is a problem in its own way. First, I cleaned my room, which I don't usually get around to, and then Michael's. I have a routine for cleaning the common areas of the house as part of my daily chores. But personal spaces tend to get neglected. Michael, too, with his late returns and frequent business trips, hardly ever does a thorough cleaning. So, I quickly finished up my room and started on Michael's. There's a shelf in his room filled with DVDs and CDs. His hobby. After all, what started our marriage was a shared interest. It was a match made through relatives, but I remember being surprised at how well our conversation went when we first met. Thinking back to those times makes me nostalgic. But then, I found something odd. A clear CD case with a homemade-looking label. But the content was a DVD. The shine on its surface was different from a CD. Apparently, it was a homemade burn. The label on the pastel background had some dates printed on it. Feeling an odd sense of foreboding, I decided to watch it. I put it in the player in the living room and pressed play. On the screen was a woman smiling on what looked like a hospital bed. But I was shocked when the camera zoomed out. The woman's belly was big. I sped through the video, with a sense of dread growing inside me. Eventually, the woman in the video was moved to the delivery room. The camera followed her in, and I was taken aback by the angle. It wasn't just showing the upper half of the pregnant woman and the doctors working hard. It was clearly trying to capture the lower half, the actual birth. I slowed the video down out of curiosity for what I hadn't experienced myself. Then I heard a voice amidst the screams of pain, "Michael, honey.
Please hold my hand, hold it."
Along with the woman's voice, the screen shook, and a man's voice chimed in.
"You can do it, Emily."
Michael? That voice? What is this? I was frozen, unable to move as the video continued to play. Now that I began to understand what I was seeing, I couldn't fast forward anymore. Soon there was the sound of a baby. Voices of joy from a man and a woman followed, and the camera seemed to pass to someone else, showing the couple lovingly looking at the child. So, this was a childbirth video. That term oddly kept running through my mind. Then suddenly, I heard a loud noise from behind me. Michael, is it him?
Susan!
I hadn't even noticed my mother-in-law right behind me.
May, what is this?
I found it while cleaning Michael's room. Susan looked disbelieving. But in the video before us, her son was laughing heartily with another woman and a child. This wasn't a dream. It was real.
May, for now, put this DVD back where you found it. What? We need to investigate this.
Saying that, Susan hugged me tightly and said, "It'll be okay." After that, I extended my leave and started traveling around. One sunny afternoon, I went to a small park in the neighboring city and approached a woman playing with her child.
Excuse me, are you Amanda Thompson?
Yes. Who are you? Amanda looked puzzled at the sight of me and the man in a suit.
My name is May Irwin.
Actually, it's about your husband.
My husband? Are you the one he's having an affair with? What?
I immediately denied it. Relieved, she invited us to her home. It wasn't appropriate to discuss such matters elsewhere with a small child in tow. The Thompson residence was an apartment near the park.
I'm sorry, I can't offer much hospitality. No, it's us who should apologize for the sudden visit. But Amanda, you have suspicions about your husband's affair, don't you?
Yes, I can't really do much about it now, considering my situation. She glanced at her daughter playing in the next room.
She's a beautiful little girl. Yes, very. Then, for your daughter's sake, I'd like to talk to you about your husband. I know who his mistress is.
Really, there is one?
Yes, but this woman was two-timing. What?
Amanda gasped in surprise.
It's hard to believe. I was shocked too. Turns out, my husband's mistress has another man, and she's making my husband believe her child is his. What are you saying?
I then explained to Amanda how I investigated everything. I used my savings from my job to hire a lawyer and a private investigator to look into my husband's mistress. Her name is Emily Young. Michael's colleague and my age. She has a son and returned to work while leaving him at daycare.
My husband was visiting her under the guise of business trips. How about yours?
Indeed, such trips did increase after the child was born.
I had them investigate her place for my husband's affair. That's when we discovered your husband was visiting her too.
Amanda sighed heavily, looking at the photos I spread out.
This is the lawyer I'm currently working with.
The lawyer nodded at her.
Amanda Thompson, I won't ask what you want to do here. But I want to settle things with my husband. So, I'd like to ask for your cooperation.
Cooperation? Yes, I replied. Some time later, a memorial service was held in this house, inviting all the relatives. It was the 13th anniversary of my husband's grandfather's passing. My husband's grandparents had passed away long before I married into the family, and memorial services were held occasionally at this main house, bringing many relatives together. But, well, maybe this will be the last time, Susan said. From now on, they planned to hold such events more privately. Originally, it seemed it was going to be just our family this time too. But my parents-in-law, especially Susan, changed their plans. I followed Susan's instructions and bustled about. In the room, which had been opened up by removing the sliding doors, we arranged low tables and chairs, ordered food, and after the service, all the relatives gathered in the room. On the long table in the room, we laid out food ordered from a familiar restaurant, along with dishes that Susan and I prepared. As the event was from midday to evening, some relatives from far away had booked nearby accommodation. So, there were quite a few people enjoying drinks in between. Around the time most had finished eating, Susan stood before the relatives with a smile and said, "Today, there's something I really want all of you to see." As if responding to Susan's words, I quickly set up a projector and screen I had prepared for the day and closed the blackout curtains. "What's this?" Michael and his father looked puzzled. Then, the screen lit up. That pastel-colored title.
What?
Michael exclaimed in shock.
Mom, May, what are you doing?
Ignoring Michael's words, I started playing the edited version of the original DVD, focusing on key scenes where Michael and Emily Sakurai were identifiable. "Hey, isn't that Michael? But why this?" Such murmurs arose from among the relatives. As the screen showed Emily Sakurai thanking Michael with tears, he just slumped to the ground, defeated. That's all.
I apologize for showing something unpleasant, but this is vital for the announcement about our family's future that I'm about to make. I wanted to share it with everyone.
Susan's voice was firm. Understanding the situation quickly from Michael's reaction and Susan's words, his father asked,
"So, is this child his?"
"No, it's not," I responded. The relatives all buzzed at once. Not just them, but Michael himself too.
"My child, not mine? What do you mean, May?"
At that moment, the sliding doors of the room, now a banquet hall, were opened. All eyes turned there. "It's his child." Yes, it was Amanda who walked in. Behind Amanda, several men and women could be seen. The room, now darkened after the screening, was lit again. But the next room was dark, and it was unclear who was there. "And you are?" Michael's father calmly asked Amanda.
"I'm sorry for the sudden intrusion. I'm Amanda Thompson."
"And this Mrs. Thompson is?"
"Actually, my husband, Nick Thompson, confessed to fathering a child with Emily Young here, pretending to be Michael Irwin."
With that, she and the lawyer she brought with her exposed the two. Michael suddenly stood up and lunged at Emily Young.
"What's this about, you?"
Emily Young looked disgusted and turned away silently.
"There's nothing more to it, Michael."
Michael's father pulled him away from Emily.
"It seems you planned this." "Sorry, dear, you tend to be a bit loose-lipped and you're too soft on Michael." "That's not true." "Well, let us handle this." "Right, Susan and May, go ahead."
Then Michael's father moved towards his wife. Michael tried to stand up, but his father's stern command, "You stay right there," kept him seated. Then, as if on trial, Michael's father seated Emily Young and Nick Thompson in the cleared space. I adjusted the lighting and operated the projector again. This time, edited evidence photos flashed on the screen.
"Ladies and gentlemen, after finding the birth video in Michael's room, I commissioned a private investigator. This is what they found. May, you. Here we have them in the park with a child. On that day, Michael was supposedly on a business trip far away."
I continued as the crowd murmured, glancing at Michael.
"And this lady here, Emily Young, during the investigation, we captured something interesting."
I switched the video.
"Stop!"
Now photos of Emily Young and Nick Thompson entering and leaving a hotel appeared. Different times and places.
"So, I contacted Mrs. Amanda Thompson and asked for her cooperation." "Cooperation?"
"A DNA test.
To determine the father of the child born in the video."
Then the screen changed once more. Displayed were charts and graphs received from the testing agency.
"How did you?"
Emily Young raised her voice.
"How did you get my child's DNA? I mean, without anyone knowing."
She must have noticed the atmosphere changing around her from the two men beside her. Emily Young glared back at me, trembling. I, on the other hand, stayed completely calm.
"Ms. Young, you frequent a particular park, correct? What about it? Didn't people often tell you what a cute baby you have?" "What?" "I had a female investigator from the detective agency collect your child's saliva."
Emily Young's expression changed. Recalling something.
"When you wiped off the drool while holding the baby, right?"
Ah. Emily collapsed onto the long table, realizing the implication.
"And then, I obtained samples from Michael, and from Nick Thompson, provided by Amanda. These were sent to the testing agency. This is the result."
The screen showed the probability of each man being the father. While Nick's numbers were significant, Michael's were 0.
"But, I already knew that." "What? How so?" "Remember, during our premarital health check, they suggested a detailed examination for you due to the possibility of azoospermia?"
Michael fell silent.
"Despite my urging, you always dismissed it, saying you were different, too busy. And here are my test results."
The screen showed my results, indicating no issues.
"Our inability to have children wasn't because of me."
That was what I wanted to say in front of all the gathered relatives.
"Yes, that's right. Michael, you didn't want to face the truth, so you avoided the tests." "Mom, I took a long time to conceive you. Your father and I both had issues, albeit minor.
The relatives murmured, remembering.
But we faced our health issues and eventually had you. And what about you? Pretending everything's fine, fathering a child with another woman. Were you satisfied, thinking you had no problems, and planning to divorce May over this?
Susan's stern words left Michael speechless.
I'm fine with a divorce, Susan. I won't accept it. May is already our daughter. I want to stay your daughter too. Right? There's no divorce, okay?
Well, Michael's father pondered. Susan, how did our son turn out like this? Maybe we spoiled him too much.
Divorce would be a reasonable outcome. No! I'm supposed to inherit this house. That's off the table.
Under the brightened lights, Michael's eyes widened.
It's more likely you can't have children. And after what you've done, leaving the inheritance to you would be unwise.
Then, turning to the relatives.
We're considering adopting a formal heir eventually. For now, we'll disown Michael and formally adopt May as our daughter. Father!
Michael slumped, defeated.
The relatives can decide who will be the heir.
Susan declared the gathering over, leaving only the involved parties.
So, lawyer, I'd like you to handle Michael's disownment, May's adoption, and their divorce proceedings. Later, we'll discuss the heir's adoption, but for now, these matters first. Understood.
The lawyer, brought in by Susan, was the family's counsel. Michael seemed to have lost all will to speak.
And for Amanda's divorce case, I'll refer it to a trusted colleague. Rest assured.
Thank you.
Divorce?
Nick reacted, shocked.
What can you do alone? You're just a housewife. With your alimony and child support, I'll manage to raise our daughter. You can be happy with your child with Emily.
Amanda retorted sharply. And you? The lawyer addressed Emily Young calmly. Why did you do this?
Did you not think both May and Amanda could sue you for damages? Me, pay damages?
Emily looked genuinely surprised.
Of course.
As the lawyer nodded affirmatively, Emily Young suddenly descended into chaos, shouting various things in a frenzy.
Then we will discuss this matter elsewhere. Please contact us once you've made a decision.
The lawyer said, taking Emily Young and Nick Thompson away.
Thank you for everything. I couldn't have investigated this far on my own. Don't mention it. It's because of your situation that Michael might learn his lesson. We're in this together. Let's hope for some good news soon.
You too. Amanda replied and then left. I squatted down in front of Michael, who was leaning against a pillar, lost in thought, and said,
This happened because you never took my words seriously from the start.
Michael just hung his head in despair. Afterward, as declared by his father, Michael was disowned and left the house. He rented a small apartment near his workplace and continued working. Although the alimony for me was settled through property division, his savings were nearly depleted. There's also the matter of revoking the recognition of the child he once thought was his. It seems he genuinely loved Emily Young's child. So realizing the child wasn't his must have been a tremendous shock. At work, he became solely focused on his job, reportedly developing an aversion to women. Given that his colleagues knew about his ordeal, his workplace became uncomfortably tense. The rumor of being cuckolded and deceived in such a manner is indeed a dishonorable one for a man. Though the financial impact was less than the other two involved, the emotional toll must be immense. If he quits his job, his father's decision to disown him will likely remain unchanged. In a way, this might be more difficult than being cast away far off. When Michael decided to rent the room, I sent all the CDs and DVDs from his old room, not bothering to include a rack for them. I could easily picture those items remaining in their cardboard boxes or scattered all over the floor, creating a mess. On top of the cardboard boxes, I included the birth video. As a subtle form of revenge. Meanwhile, Emily Young is confronting Nick Thompson, demanding he take responsibility and pay child support. Nick, already obligated to pay alimony and child support to Amanda, refuses to pay for a child he never recognized. For Emily, she faces the challenge of paying damages to both Amanda and me while raising her child alone. Her predicament has become known at her workplace, making her situation incredibly uncomfortable. Her attempts to extract money from the men involved might be seen as either resilience or desperation. "Hello, I'm coming in."
Welcome.
Since then, Amanda moved from her previous apartment to a smaller one suitable for a single mother. She found a new job and leaves her child at daycare on workdays. On weekends, she sometimes visits our house. Oh, what a cutie. Come here. Now my true parents, Susan and her husband, adore her child. Amanda could have returned to her parents' home out of state, but she chose to stay here due to difficulties in finding work and childcare there. Is it too much of a luxury? Not at all. Please, have some tea. In the large garden's shade, Amanda relishes these rare moments of relaxation. For me, dealing with workplace gossip is challenging, so spending time with someone who understands my situation is a relief. There might be future complications with the relatives deciding on an adoptive heir, but for now, peaceful days seem to continue.
I'm going to live here with my eldest son, his wife, and my grandchild.
John declared this loudly, puffing out his chest with confidence. Behind him, Michael and Linda smirked at me maliciously. How can they be so selfish? I felt dizzy, but more than that, I couldn't stand the thought of my happiness being threatened. It must have shown on my face. Michael, as if to deliver the final blow, taunted me. If you resist, I won't take care of you. I don't remember raising a child like this, but I regret that it's come to this. Still, I pretended to take the bait and firmly stated, "Then I'll leave." No one there expected that response. They stared at me, faces blank with surprise. Then John, coming to his senses, pointed at me and started yelling.
You're leaving? If you do that, you'll be out on the streets. If you think you're threatening me, think again.
I could tell his words were a bluff by the sweat on his forehead. So I looked straight at John with a bold demeanor. My name is Emma Young, a 53-year-old remote worker. I met John, my husband, when I started working and married him after several years of dating. Shortly after we got married, I got pregnant and had a healthy boy, Michael. Michael is now married and has a child of his own. John used to be very kind, always caring for me. But a few years after our marriage, his attitude began to change. After quitting my job to become a full-time homemaker following childbirth, John's treatment of me grew colder, and I was often treated harshly. I considered divorce several times, but couldn't decide because Michael was still a baby. I thought raising a child needed cooperation, but that ideal was quickly shattered. If Michael cried at night, John would click his tongue, and if I couldn't prepare his breakfast due to lack of sleep, he would yell at me early in the morning. Despite this, I couldn't help but look forward to seeing Michael grow up. When Michael began to understand things, it was a joy to see who he would call first, me or John. I won that small battle. Knowing this, John started to engage more with Michael. For example, he would entertain Michael while I cooked, or he would willingly bathe him. As a result of John's continued indulgence, Michael, contrary to my hopes, began to mimic John's behavior. Once Michael could do things on his own, he became more mischievous. When I scolded him, he would retort with John's words. When Michael didn't clean up his toys after playing, I told him to tidy up, and he snapped back.
Shut up. If you want it cleaned up so badly, ask more nicely.
Then, after I properly scolded him face to face, he would clean up with a disgruntled face, but soon he'd be back to his old ways. I worried he would become a nuisance to others and talked to John about it, but he said, "He's a boy, he needs to be energetic. He'll behave once he's older." Indulging him like this, Michael grew up mischievous. There were countless difficulties, but somehow, I managed to raise him until he graduated from college. It seemed like neither John nor Michael understood my struggles, and I felt burdened with unreasonable feelings as Michael started living alone. Honestly, when Michael left, I felt relieved and returned to living with just John in our house. Until then, Michael's presence had distracted me from John's bad behavior. But now, in the suddenly quiet house, John's negative traits stood out more. His attitude hadn't changed since our marriage years ago, but his unreasonable behavior now took a toll on my mental health. One day, when I was almost fed up, Michael brought a woman home. He said she was his fiancée and they were planning to get married soon. I was overjoyed that Michael, who had been nothing but trouble, was getting married. His fiancée, Linda, appeared strong-willed but was soft-spoken and very polite. She seemed an unlikely match for Michael, but I had no complaints since she chose him. John also approved of their marriage right away. They planned to live in Michael's current apartment after marriage, not with us, but the thought of a lively future made me happy. I know things are gonna get tough for you guys, so feel free to rely on me. They had both been living alone until now, but they would be living together from now on. I wanted to be a support for them, expecting they might face various challenges. But after they got married, they frequently visited, taking over the living room from morning till night, joining us for shopping only to add unnecessary items to the cart and leave me to pay. I started to feel fed up with Michael and Linda's behavior. Then, when Michael and Linda, who used to frequent our house, suddenly stopped visiting, I received a surprising call.
Hey, listen to this. We're having a baby.
Michael sounded ecstatic over the phone. John and I congratulated them on their first grandchild.
Good job, Michael. So, when's the baby due?
What? Didn't you hear me? The baby's here, that's why I'm calling from the hospital. It turned out Michael was announcing not a pregnancy, but the birth of their child. Shocked, we rushed to the hospital to see our grandchild. After that whirlwind of events, Michael and Linda started visiting often again. It was great seeing my grandchild, but they would leave me with the baby and go out. And to top it off, they'd say, "Emma, the baby's fine with just milk, thanks." Yeah, lucky to have you, Mom. It's great to have someone to leave the baby with when we go out. They'd laugh as they left me with the baby. Actually, I had started working from home around that time. When Michael brought Linda over, I proposed to John that we leave this house. What are you talking about? If we do that, where will we live? John complained immediately, but I quickly countered with a new proposal. Let's build a new house. Don't worry, I'll also work from home. My parents are getting older, and I'm thinking of living with them. Let's give this house to Michael and Linda, and we can live in a new one. Living together would mean we'd need a house of a certain size and layout, but I convinced him that by combining his income and mine, we could reach our goal. Reluctantly, he agreed, and I began working from home right away. Even when I was tasked with caring for my grandchild or dealing with John's unreasonable outbursts, I never missed a day of work. During these times, the moment finally came to realize my dream. John, albeit reluctantly, agreed to save money for a new house to live with my parents. He wouldn't cooperate unless I pushed him, and I faced more unreasonable behavior. But reaching our goal made all that seem insignificant.
John, we've finally reached our goal. I'm going to see my parents now to discuss moving forward.
I had been talking to John about the new house, but now I could have a proper discussion with my parents involved. Leaving a grumbling John behind, I headed to my parents' place. Despite multiple intrusions from Michael and Linda, just the thought of living soon in a new house with my parents brightened my mood. My work was going well, and I was finally able to purchase the house I had always wanted. I reported this to John, looking forward to the day of the handover. Then, on the day of the handover, as I was about to step into the house, excited, a moving truck suddenly stopped by. Stunned, I watched as the movers began unloading. And I hurriedly stopped them. I hadn't heard of such arrangements, and neither our nor my parents' belongings had been moved in yet. Whose belongings were they trying to move in? The confused mover and I were trying to understand the situation, when a loud voice came from somewhere.
What are you doing, meddling in things?
The voice belonged to John, and as I turned around, relieved to hear him, I realized the words were directed at me. I realized that those words were directed at me. John gestured dismissively at me as if I were a nuisance, while Michael and Linda were talking to the moving company staff. Then John came over to me and said this.
"We're going to live here with our eldest son, his wife, and our grandchild."
John announced this loudly, chest puffed out with confidence. Michael and Linda stood behind him, smirking at me maliciously. How could they be so selfish? I felt dizzy, but more than that, I couldn't stand the thought of my happiness being threatened. That must have shown on my face. Michael, as if to deliver the final blow, taunted me. "If you resist, I won't take care of you." I don't remember raising a child like this, but I regretted that it had come to this. Still, pretending to take the bait, I firmly stated, "Then I'll leave." No one there expected that response. They just stared at me, faces blank with surprise. Then John, coming to his senses, pointed at me and started yelling.
"You're leaving? If you do that, you'll be out on the streets. If you think you're threatening me, think again."
I could tell his words were a bluff by the sweat on his forehead. So I looked straight at John with a bold demeanor. However, my attitude was in vain, as John smirked, regaining his composure. "That's right, exactly. I'm supposed to be the owner of this house. Wasn't that the agreement?" Indeed, the new house was in John's name. But the purpose of building this new house was to live with my parents, and there were supposed to be other conditions too. Yet, why does John feel so entitled? When I first discussed building a new home with living with my parents in mind, John naturally brought up Michael. Going forward, it's Michael and his family who will live the longest. Wouldn't it then be better to build the new house for Michael and his family? That was a reasonable opinion, but I wanted them to achieve this on their own. So, I persistently persuaded John until he reluctantly agreed. That's why the new house was designed with as many barrier-free features as possible, geared towards my parents. Since marrying John, I hadn't spent much good time. But now that Michael is married, I should be able to live as I please. I've spent so much time on John and Michael, neglecting my parents. Now it's time to give back to them. Lost in these thoughts, I must have been glaring at John and the others. Realizing this, John mocked me. "What's with that defiant look?
Struck a nerve and now you're speechless, huh?"
His words infuriated me. I've put up with so much and resigned myself to his behavior until now. But this time, I couldn't just let it go. Even when John, who was once kind, changed his attitude completely. Even when Michael, imitating John, hurled harsh words at me. Even when John got angry, yelled, threw tantrums, or ignored me on a whim. Even when Linda clearly treated me disrespectfully and dumped childcare on me. I had endured all this patiently. But now, it wasn't just about me, it involved my parents too. And to have it so easily taken over like this was unbearable. Fed up, I couldn't hold back anymore.
Enough is enough. This house was supposed to be for me and my parents, and you, wasn't it? Technically, you're the owner, but strangely, the bank account for the payments is only Michael's. Who prepared everything up to this point, huh?
Yes, the condition for building this house was that it would be in John's name. I understood that. It's better for appearances. But strangely, only Michael was making the loan payments. John claimed he wanted it to look like Michael bought the house. So it seemed like he was doing a good deed for my parents. But I never understood the reason behind this arrangement. However, as long as I could live with my parents, I was okay with any form. So, although it didn't sit well with me, I agreed. Little did I know it would turn out like this. As I stated my case, John, Michael, and Linda all smirked in the same way. That's when I realized it. John had planned from the start to make this house his own. I was like a worker ant, gathering materials and building the nest, only to be manipulated at the last moment. When the house was completed and it was time to move, I realized this and snapped. Then, I presented John with the divorce papers I had kept hidden for years. I had prepared them over a decade ago, when Michael was in high school and away at a sports camp. John and I went out to dine, having the house to ourselves for a change. During the meal, we bumped into one of John's colleagues and had a bit of small talk. When the colleague tried to excuse himself, hurrying the conversation, John said something awful.
Don't worry about it. Eating out with her is just boring, but I'm the kind husband, playing along. We don't even have a reservation. Maybe I'll send her home and go for a drink. Can't stand looking at her old face.
John's colleague left with a forced smile, clearly uncomfortable. I was shocked by the verbal abuse thrown at me in public. Pretending nothing happened, we continued the meal, but I couldn't even remember its taste. The next day, I went to the office to get a divorce form. When I showed it to John, he was momentarily surprised, but then smirked.
Nice preparation. You know your stuff. Oh, finally realizing your place, are you? Thought you'd understand sooner, but glad you made it this far. And to think you understand you're disposable, how smart of you.
Exactly.
You really get it, Mom. Keep working and pay for our house, okay?
All three of them, John, Michael, and Linda, laughed at me condescendingly, and Michael snatched the divorce form. He handed it to John, who began filling it out, humming a tune. It was clear from his attitude that John didn't remember anything he had done to me, not just from that night but all the years prior. He might even start claiming he did nothing wrong. After filling it out, John waved the form at me, smirking. I snatched it, quickly put it in my bag, and took out my phone. I opened the recording app and held it up in front of them.
Emma, you're scary. Gathering evidence for divorce now is too late, you know.
Ignoring Linda's mocking laughter, I confirmed with John. I want no alimony or property division, just don't contact me again.
Sure.
If you do, I'll hire a lawyer and demand alimony.
Yeah.
John responded nonchalantly, laughing throughout. I wondered how someone could be so brazen. Trying to keep my temper in check, I turned to Michael and stated clearly. And Michael, now that our marital ties are severed, our parent-child relationship is over too.
Ah, okay.
They both responded. Well, that's all I needed. We'll likely never meet again, so take care of yourselves. I stopped the recording and decided to leave. Neither John, Michael, nor Linda seemed to grasp the reality of their future. Without anyone stopping me, I went to the office to file the divorce papers. 3 days after filling out and submitting the rest of the divorce papers at the office. While I was packing up with my parents for the move, John called me. Just the other day, I told him not to contact me again, or I'd hire a lawyer and sue for emotional distress. But he must have had a reason to contact me so desperately. However, now that we're divorced, it's no longer my concern. Busy with packing, I decided to ignore the call. But just as I thought John's call had ended, Michael called me next. Both of them reaching out must mean something serious is going on, but it's none of my business. I ignored both calls and continued working, but the constant ringing was too distracting. Reluctantly, I answered when John called again, and immediately, I heard his pitiful voice.
Help me, Emma, I can't stop the calls from the bank and Michael.
With that one sentence, I understood what John and Michael were going through and sighed in exasperation. I answered wearily. I don't know anything about that. It's no longer my concern. John shouted back at me in a voice as loud as he could muster.
You heartless woman!
No matter what he said, it was absurd for him to complain to me given their situation. Honestly, I couldn't care less what happens to them. More importantly, do you remember the promise we made just the other day? I deliberately sighed audibly before reiterating. Though it was already too late since John had contacted me. What promise? As expected, he seemed to have forgotten. I couldn't help but laugh inwardly. The one where I said I'd hire a lawyer and sue for emotional distress if you contacted me.
I never heard such a thing.
Whether you listened or not, I definitely said it, and you responded.
No, I didn't. I wouldn't easily agree to such nonsensical terms.
John was vehemently denying it, but I had anticipated such a claim. That's why I had recorded the conversation. It's recorded, so you can't escape this.
Please, forgive me. If this continues, both Michael and I will be lost.
John's voice was even weaker than when he first called, pleading with me. But considering everything that's happened, there's no way I could forgive him. Absolutely not. I'm going to consult a lawyer now. I flatly rejected him, but John, who only accepts convenient truths, persisted.
Let's get back together, okay?
I bluntly replied to John's absurd suggestion. In your dreams. I was surprised at how cold my own voice sounded. I then hung up and blocked John's number. That should ensure no further contact from John. Feeling relieved, I was about to resume packing when my phone rang again. Wondering what it was now, I checked and saw Michael's name. I had completely forgotten in the heat of the moment with John, but Michael must also be receiving numerous calls from the bank. He seemed to be reaching out to me for help, just like John. I thought about not answering, but decided to enlighten him about society and answered the call.
Mom, please help me. I keep getting these crazy calls from the bank, and Dad won't answer his phone.
His voice was as pitiful as one could imagine. Having to deal with the same issue twice in one day was too much for me. So, I decided to be brief and sent him the recording before he could say anything more. Your father is that kind of person. Also, I've just sent you a recording of something important, so listen to it and understand. With that said, don't contact me again. You and I are strangers now. After hearing what I said, Michael was yelling something on the other end of the phone, but I hung up without listening. Then, just like I did with John, I blocked his number and went back to my packing. Once I finished a phase of the packing, I headed to the law office. I explained the whole situation and decided to sue John, Michael, and of course, Linda for emotional distress. To be honest, considering there's a child between Michael and Linda, I thought about going easy on them. But thinking back to what happened 3 days ago and everything before that, I just couldn't let it go. I hoped this would be a good opportunity for them to learn about the harsh realities of society. So, I didn't hold back and went through with the full claim. As a result, John was demoted and took a pay cut after this incident became known at his company. Apparently, it became so uncomfortable for him there that he resigned voluntarily. I heard from my lawyer that he's now juggling day jobs to pay the alimony. As for Michael and Linda, their schemes failing led to a huge fight. Linda even brought up divorce. But with a child to consider and unable to afford the alimony on her own, she gave up on the idea. Their home is probably as cold as ever now. I couldn't help but laugh, thinking they didn't have to follow in their father's footsteps so closely. Of course, Michael ended up getting fired due to the commotion. Now both he and Linda are working multiple jobs, sweating it out to pay the alimony. As for me, I went back to my parents' house and told them everything. We discussed what I should do next and decided I'd live with them. Together with my parents, we're now renovating the house to make it comfortable for the three of us. Because of this, we're currently staying somewhere temporarily. Since the divorce, I've been freed from all that mess, and thankfully, my work has been recognized, leading to an increase in my income. From now on, I'm going to work even harder and live a happy life. Being with my parents is now the greatest joy of my life.
I'll be happy enough for both of us.
I can't believe my husband, for some reason, is marrying another woman.
You were saving up for our wedding, right? So, that's basically my money, huh? Thanks for saving it all up. Catherine, you're such a great woman.
While I'm struggling to comprehend the wedding itself, Tyler just keeps spouting nonsense. It means he stole the money I had been carefully saving for our own wedding expenses.
Huh? You didn't know?
I tilted my head in confusion. They shouldn't be able to get married so casually.
I hope you find happiness,
I said with a smile, leaving the detestable wedding behind. But behind that smile was a flame of revenge. I'm Catherine, 26 years old. Catherine, you're so kind, is what I've always been told since I was a child. But in reality, I just can't express my own feelings. My mother always scolded me, be strong. What do you want, Catherine? But I don't even know what I want. I just kept smiling so as not to be disliked by others.
Hey, Catherine, your skirt's flipped up.
Tyler said that and playfully flipped up my skirt like a gust of wind.
Stop it.
I held down my skirt and yelled out. My eyes might have been glaring.
Success. Catherine can get angry too. That's good. You look cute even when you're mad.
Tyler said with a mischievous smile. This all seemed like something out of elementary school, but both Tyler and I were college students at the time.
Next time, I want to see you cry.
I was blushing. Tyler is a jerk, but for some reason, I was drawn to him. It was the carefree Tyler who broke me out of my always smiling, gentle shell. We started dating after graduating from college. Life with the sociable Tyler was stimulating for me, who had lived a modest life. He'd take me to lively places like nightclubs or summer music festivals. I started staying up late and traveling, which I never did before finishing work and heading straight home. I even enjoyed a moderate amount of alcohol. Tyler and I are complete opposites. None of his friends are as reserved as me. I was worried we were mismatched when Tyler unexpectedly proposed.
Are you sure about someone like Catherine?
During our engagement party, one of Tyler's drunk friends loudly asked him. Even I was concerned internally about being myself. But I never expected someone else to say it. It meant that even from others' perspective, Tyler and I didn't match. I shrank in embarrassment and sadness, trying to make myself disappear.
What are you talking about? If I'm gonna marry someone, it's gotta be Catherine.
Tyler's cheerful voice saved me. He chugged a beer and put his arm around my shoulder.
See? She's like the traditional wives of old times, right? It's rare to find such a lady these days. I'm the type who wants to be pampered.
I may not be a wonderful woman, but I want to be useful to him. I felt my cheeks getting hot. With Tyler and me as the focus, our friends were having a blast, drinking and singing. We drank until late at night in Tyler's small apartment.
But really, are you okay with Catherine? Seems kinda boring, you know. At night.
As the alcohol flowed, the conversation got increasingly crude. I felt a bit uncomfortable, but slightly tipsy. I believed in Tyler's love. Yet, I was spectacularly betrayed.
Yeah, that's my biggest problem.
His friends eagerly jumped on the topic. Tyler began to boast about embarrassingly private matters. Despite my pleas to stop. Your wife's not liking this, you know, a friend teased, and Tyler puffed up his chest. I'm not a man who's whipped by his wife. He was even leaning on a female friend.
Maybe I should get my nighttime care elsewhere.
Tyler and the woman exchanged sleazy glances, seeming not entirely against the idea. Another friend mocked, imitating a woman's voice, this cheater, enemy of women.
Anyway, I'm not married to Catherine yet, so cheating's technically not cheating, right? Maybe I should play around more while I still can.
Tyler's joking words didn't sound like a joke. He was embracing the woman, clearly crossing a line of friendship.
Tyler, you've had too much to drink. Let's take a break.
I pretended to be concerned to separate them.
Tyler, man, you're the worst. Cheating's not okay, married or not.
A friend laughed and lectured. Though they weren't really defending me, Tyler seemed to calm down momentarily. He scratched his chin in thought, nodded, and opened a drawer in the cabinet. What he took out was a marriage certificate.
Look, everyone. As you can see, I'm marrying Catherine. I love only Catherine. I would never cheat.
He declared it while being terribly drunk, swaying his body unsteadily. We had filled out that marriage certificate right after he proposed. It was decided that our marriage registration and wedding would take place about a year later, on November 22nd. We would start living together after that. As Tyler declared his intention, Everyone cheered and congratulated us, and I was immersed in joy. But the warmth in my heart rapidly cooled after that. All right. I'm off. Tyler carelessly stuffed the certificate into his pocket and left the house. Several friends happily followed him. I stayed because many friends were still there. A decision I'd soon regret. Congratulations on your marriage. Just a few minutes later, Tyler and his friends returned, unusually high-spirited. Unbelievably, they had actually submitted the marriage certificate.
We'll go to the office together, okay?
Our happy promise was shattered by a drunken whim, and the next day, after the friends had left, I silently cleaned the terribly messy room. Empty cans were scattered even to the bathroom, food spills everywhere, a depressing sight. After a while, Tyler woke up, but I didn't want to see his face. As I silently cleaned, Tyler came up to me, sensing something was wrong.
What's up, you mad? It bums me out when someone's not into having fun with everyone. My friends are your friends, right? I wish you'd get along with them. Thanks for cleaning up. You're such a traditional wife, always so considerate. If I'm gonna marry, it's definitely gotta be you, Catherine. Seriously. I love you.
I was disgusted by his smooth talk, but felt my heart soften as he embraced me with his large frame.
I'm really sorry about last night. I know you're not into wild parties. How about we go for a relaxed date at the aquarium next time?
Yeah. Despite everything, Tyler is kind. No use crying over spilled milk. We can just make our wedding day our anniversary. I was thinking of a modest ceremony, but Tyler would probably want to invite a lot of friends. He's the type who wants to enjoy his big day in a flashy way. A wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event. I want to make it a memorable day that will stay in our hearts forever. I started getting more excited about the wedding. Then we finally booked the wedding. But that's when Tyler's behavior began to change.
You didn't really like hanging out with everyone for drinks, did you? You don't have to force yourself anymore. I'll go by myself.
Tyler still hangs out a lot with his friends, but he stopped inviting me. I'm grateful, but also worried, because there are many women among his friends.
It's okay. I want to go with you. No, you don't have to come. The vibe gets bad when you are around, not getting into the mood. I'm sorry, but I don't like it when you drink until late at night with lots of girls around.
Tyler, usually so cheerful, turned serious.
What? Who do you think you are? Acting like you own me? If you keep butting in, we can break up right now.
I clamped my mouth shut. Is it really okay for us to move forward like this?
Are you really okay getting married?
Even my mom, who I hadn't consulted, started to worry. Maybe my anxiety was showing. It's okay, I replied with a smile, but my mom didn't smile back.
I think he's a really nice guy, sociable. But you're the one who knows him best, Catherine. Don't you think there's something off? You know the saying, keep both eyes open before marriage and one eye closed after. You need to really see Tyler clearly now. It's okay, it's okay.
I interrupted her.
His brightness, which I lack, is attractive. He's shown me so many new worlds. And don't worry about the wedding expenses. I've been saving up. I'm not a kid anymore, and I won't be a burden to you, Mom. There's nothing to worry about.
I didn't want to trouble my always anxious mother any further. I'm no longer a child to be scolded by my parents. Tyler and I will be fine. I kept repeating that in my mind. Then recently, the usually cold Tyler suddenly became kind.
Catherine is really a good woman.
I blushed at his heartfelt words. I had no doubts that we would smoothly proceed to our wedding. But then one Sunday, I received a strange call from one of Tyler's friends.
The wedding started. Aren't you coming, Catherine? Forget the past, let's all drink together.
Our wedding was still a long way off. It sounded like a casual invitation, maybe another drinking party to celebrate us. I asked for the location and rushed there. What I saw was beyond comprehension. A real wedding was happening. Tyler, dressed in a tuxedo, was being congratulated as the groom. A rented restaurant was filled with friends, all merry with drinks. As I froze at the entrance, one of his friends cheerfully approached me. "You're late," he said. Tyler, in a great mood, frowned.
Hey, look, an uninvited woman showed up.
Next to him, the bride, Katie. One of his friends laughed loudly. I remember once at a drinking party, Tyler and Katie were getting too cozy. Their closeness was uncomfortable, but now it all makes sense. Looking around the venue, I found Tyler and Katie looking demure. This wasn't a bad joke. It was a real wedding.
What's going on?
I managed to ask in a shaky voice. Tyler, without a hint of remorse, answered casually.
It's a wedding. Huh? You thought we were still dating? You're joking, right?
Tyler laughed so hard he held his stomach.
Wow, you're really naive. You're perfect for a wedding. Naive and easy to manipulate.
Tyler patted my back mockingly. Then he whispered in my ear.
I really loved you, you know. Because you're such a good woman. A woman like you, I've never met before.
Normally, those would be sweet words, but they felt so sarcastic.
But you know, it's boring. You're happy being called a good woman? Hilarious. It means you're convenient, you know? I only dated you for fun, but in the end, you were just about the money. Thanks, Catherine. Your money made this fancy wedding possible.
His words hit me like a lightning bolt. Could it be? No, that's impossible. But I couldn't be hesitant anymore. The unbelievable was happening.
Did you use my savings? Bingo.
Embarrassed, sad, but more than anything, furious. A boiling rage surged up from within me. I'd never hated someone so much in my life.
Hey, you were saving for our wedding, right? So, it's my money, right? Thanks for hoarding it for me. You're really a good woman, Catherine.
Tyler's words were like a slap in the face.
I'll be happy enough for both of us.
I understood what Tyler meant. But it was absurd.
Huh? You didn't know?
I tilted my head and just stated the fact.
You can't marry Katie, you know.
Tyler looked clueless, making me burst into laughter. He's the naive one. The wedding, more like an extension of a drinking party, was loud, but everyone was dressed up. Me, crashing in casual clothes, must look like a pathetic ex-girlfriend. Tyler's parents, who I met for a marriage introduction just half a year ago, glared at me openly. Couldn't they see Tyler's untrustworthiness? His friends were no different. I realized the absurdity of Tyler's surroundings.
Hope you find happiness,
I said with a smile, leaving the detestable wedding behind. But behind that smile, I was burning with thoughts of revenge. 30 minutes later, Tyler trudged back to his apartment. I had anticipated this, so I was waiting in front of his place. As soon as he saw me, Tyler lunged at me.
Why did you do that?
Do what?
The marriage. Why am I married to you?
He thought I had somehow interfered, so he immediately submitted the marriage registration with Katie at the office. But of course, it was too late.
You're the one who got married on your own. You controlling woman. Quiet on the outside, but doing crazy stuff.
Tyler, with teary eyes, had a red, swollen cheek. Probably hit by Katie.
It's you who did things on your own, Tyler. You're the one who submitted the marriage certificate. Huh? Why would I do such a thing?
I thrust my smartphone in Tyler's face and played a video. It showed the day Tyler and I registered our marriage.
I'll make Catherine happy for a lifetime.
He was shouting something unimaginable in the current situation. A drunk Tyler and his friends had submitted the marriage certificate on a whim. An undeniable fact. And he had completely forgotten about this significant life event.
No way!
Tyler snatched my phone and repeatedly watched the short video. This video was posted on social media by one of his friends. It was one of those posts that automatically delete after 24 hours. So by the time Tyler and his friends sobered up, it was no longer visible. Reluctantly, but technically, it was our marriage registration day. Thinking it would become a funny story years later, I had saved the video. But the power of self-deception is scary. I never imagined Tyler had forgotten he was married. Love is blind, they say, but my eyes were severely clouded. Tyler, always appearing fun and sparkling, was just an irresponsible, flippant man.
Get a divorce quickly. Why should I be married to someone like you? Ridiculous.
Tyler started to throw a fit, shifting all the blame. I regretted marrying such a man, but what's done is done. Might as well use this situation.
Fine, but I have a condition.
Tyler fell silent for a moment.
Return my money?
An obvious request. But Tyler approached me, face red with anger.
Huh? I already spent it. You're such a miser. Like I said before, you were saving for our wedding, right? So, it's my money. Well, the bride changed,
When I checked online banking, Tyler had taken over $60,000. This was not just the money saved since our engagement, but what I had been saving since starting work.
It's not your money. It's theft,
I said firmly. Then a voice came from behind.
It's not theft.
Turning around, Katie was there. Tyler quickly covered his swollen cheek, but Katie seemed in a good mood again. They had apparently had a dispute about not being able to marry, but Katie had come back to Tyler.
What? You didn't know? If a family member takes money from another family member, it's not theft.
Katie, looking like she couldn't even do multiplication, smugly displayed her knowledge.
Tyler, you're lucky. Being married saved you. Theft is when you steal someone else's money. If it's a husband taking his wife's money, it's okay. The police won't arrest you. There's no reason to return it.
Tyler's expression brightened.
Really?
Really, Mom said the same thing when she stole all our savings and ran off with some guy.
What a joke.
I didn't see the humor, but Tyler and Katie were rolling with laughter. It dawned on me then, Tyler and I live in completely different worlds, even in what we find funny.
Hey, I want to know something. How did you withdraw the money?
Tyler puffed out his chest and explained.
Remember you told me you were saving money for our wedding? I almost laughed at how serious you were. But then I thought, if you're saving for me, I should take it, right? So, I borrowed your passbook.
Tyler had grown bored of me despite our engagement. But he found me useful. When he was being kind to me for a while, he had been searching my room for the passbook. He apparently peeked at my PIN when I was using the ATM.
I see.
Tyler bowed his head slightly.
Thanks for marrying me. This $30,000 is like a wedding gift to me and Katie, right?
I asked again, determined.
So how did you withdraw the money? I checked the transactions, and it looks like $30,000 was withdrawn all at once at the bank.
Maybe Tyler disguised himself as a woman and went to the bank, but that would be too obvious. The only other person who could withdraw the money was Katie.
High amounts usually require ID verification, right? Don't tell me someone impersonated me?
Katie visibly reacted. Then confessed without remorse.
I went in with no makeup and a mask, and nobody suspected a thing. Plain faces have no personality, so we all look the same. But honestly, walking outside without makeup was so embarrassing. I can't believe you show your plain face like that, Catherine. I couldn't stand it.
Katie laughed heartily. She obviously didn't have the knowledge she pretended to.
I see, so that means you're also a thief, Katie? Even if Tyler can't be charged because he's family, you're a stranger, so the police would arrest you, right?
Tyler and Katie exchanged a look and murmured, as their faces turned pale.
I didn't do anything. I'm innocent.
Katie quickly denied everything. But I showed them my smartphone.
I've been recording everything.
Katie's face went pale, and she slumped. She finally gave in and hung her head.
Sorry,
she muttered softly.
Sorry, please forgive me. I just did what Tyler told me. I didn't mean any harm. We needed money to get married, so I just...
Don't make it sound like I'm the bad guy. It was Katie who complained about not having money. I just came up with the plan to take Catherine's money.
What?
You said Catherine never gets angry, no matter what.
This is different.
Why do I have to be the thief? I thought Catherine would just sulk and that'd be the end of it. I didn't expect this either. It seemed I had been greatly underestimated.
Enough. This is getting confusing. Just wait, Catherine. Divorce me, and I'll pay you back little by little later.
No way. I can't trust a thief. I'll divorce you anytime, but only after you return all the money. Tyler clenched his back teeth. Katie let out a shriek.
Divorce quickly. We can't get married otherwise.
I got married to Tyler on his own accord, and I want to divorce too. But only after I get my money back.
There's no way we can return $30,000.
You are young. If you work hard together, you two can save $60,000 quickly. I did it alone, after all.
We don't have time for that. I'm pregnant.
It turned out Tyler planned to have fun before our wedding, but he got his fling pregnant, so I was unceremoniously dumped. Apparently, they had no money, not even for the wedding, moving into a new apartment, or even childbirth expenses.
You were really careless to get pregnant. Don't you think about the future? Once the child is born, you can't prioritize yourself anymore. It's not just about having fun, you know?
I couldn't help but throw some common sense at the irresponsibly couple. I felt like a concerned aunt. Will these kids be all right? I wondered, feeling pity. The child is innocent, but that doesn't mean I'll forgive Tyler and Katie. Katie, once so bold, started crying, and Tyler lay prostrate on the concrete ground. After that, I turned Tyler and Katie over to the police. Family theft might not be criminally chargeable, but civil litigation is another matter. I wasn't going to let them off easily. Then there was the infidelity during marriage. And since Tyler got his affair partner, Katie, pregnant, I demanded alimony too. I even claimed the cancellation fee for our wedding. I've got no money, why are you trying to milk me dry? Tyler cried out in anger, but I told him, this is how the real world works. If everyone lived as selfishly as Tyler, the world would fall apart. The $60,000 Katie's father fronted was safely returned. With the money returned and Katie showing remorse, she got a suspended sentence. Of course, I'm also demanding alimony from Katie for the affair.
Ruining people's happiness for fun? You have a terrible personality. How much money do you want?
A heavily pregnant Katie confronted me. I thought she came to apologize, but instead, she said this.
It's only right to get back the money that was stolen, and I didn't demand alimony because I wanted more money. Katie, you are the one who did wrong, and you have to pay the money you owe.
I responded politely, but Katie just wailed and cried. After getting the $60,000 back, I divorced Tyler. Tyler and Katie apparently got married. But their honeymoon period was anything but sweet. They had no money and were living with Katie's father. He paid the $60,000 and was making sure they repaid it by watching them strictly. Both worked at a factory owned by a friend of Katie's father, not allowed to slack off or enjoy any entertainment. Katie, being healthy, wasn't given a break until just before childbirth. Tyler tried to escape several times, but was caught and returned to this prison. Tyler and Katie blamed each other for their predicament. I heard from Katie's father, who pays me monthly.
I wish I could just get rid of a daughter like that. But the unborn child is innocent, and I have to make sure Catherine gets her payments.
Katie's mother had run away with family money and a lover, so her father had a strong aversion to his daughter doing something similar. Tyler's parents were unreliable, so I was grateful for Katie's father's help. After such harsh treatment, heartbroken, I returned to my parents' house. I expected comfort from my mother, but she scolded me instead, "Pull yourself together. Tears welled up in my eyes. I had taken my mother's unconditional acceptance for granted. My mother gently hugged me as I tried to hold back tears.
Catherine, you're kind. Being quiet and nice isn't bad, but you have to value your own feelings too.
I had been putting on a brave face to confront Tyler and Katie. The tears I had been holding back flowed freely. Mom, I'm sorry.
It's okay, you did well.
I had always been afraid of my stern mother. I avoided her, not wanting to be scolded at this age. But she has always been my biggest supporter. I spent some time at my parents' home, feeling like a child again. I ate my mother's delicious cooking to my heart's content and fought with my father over watching sports programs. I wanted to stay with them forever, but I moved out to live on my own. I want to build a new family someday. I've always avoided trying new things, but now I'm determined to actively move forward.